today's tip of the day on exercise form is going to be how to properly engage your core by activating your transverse abdominis, or other known as your TA muscle. I find that most people just kind of suck in their gut, or they use their side ab muscles to push their belly out. So we're going to learn how to draw your belly tight to pull your muscles in. We'll talk more about the TA once we get on the mat, but first I want to start with a nice gentle warm-up to get our blood flowing and our muscles warm. So here we go. I'm going to skip the music today. And maybe next time we'll add music in, okay? So I'm going to kind of use my timer here to keep us set, but I want everybody to stand up. And we're going to start with just some squats. We're not going to do plyometric jumping. So I'm just going to have you squat and stand and then rise up on your toes. So keep going. I'm going to kind of move my camera just a little bit. So for 30 seconds, we're just squatting, standing, rising up on the toes. Go at any speed you'd like to. We're going to do this for 30 seconds just to warm up. Make sure when you go down into your squat, you push your hips back. Knees stay straight. Rise up onto your toes by squeezing your butt. It's really important to kind of warm up before we do stretches and exercise, especially since we've all been in the house, working from home, schooling our children. So I got about 10 more seconds here. A little off on my timer. Okay, the next one, we're just going to put our hands at about waist level, and you're just going to bring your knee up to your hand. Okay, I want you to slightly turn your knee out to your shoulder. So your knee's moving towards your shoulder, not your chin. As you're standing on the standing leg, try to drive that leg straight into the floor as you march your other leg up. Sometimes when we do standing, lifting our leg type exercises, it's actually better for our core than sit-ups. So we're going to keep moving through this. Totally off my 30 seconds, so I'm guesstimating here. All right, and then we're going to do a rotation exercise and go through this set one more time. So stand with your feet about hip width apart, and you're just going to take one arm and reach across your body and come back, and your other arm and come back. I should probably let you see my face. So we're just going to keep going for 30 seconds through this and start the whole thing one more time. As you can see, I'm kind of getting a little out of breath, so pardon me for that. Keep going. About 10 more seconds. Okay, now let's go back into the squats. So you're going to drop into your squats, back up on your toes. Eventually, we could progress these exercises into jumping type plyometrics. However, I'm going to try to keep it nice and basic today so everybody can participate. And let's face it, if you have pelvic floor issues, you might pee your pants. Hopefully not after you go through this series while we're all on lockdown for COVID. All right, keep going 10 more seconds, and then we're going to go back into the high knees. I do have a timer in front of me, but all right, we're here, hands are at your hips. Bring your knees up towards your shoulders. We'll keep going for 30 seconds. If you feel so inclined to do some jumping, go right ahead. I won't, because that would be very embarrassing on the camera. Good, we've got about 10 more seconds here. So sometimes you can do a warm-up that's a stretching warm-up. Sometimes you can do a warm-up that's an active moving warm-up like us. I chose to do this one today, but might switch it around in other videos. All right, so then let's just kind of do the rotation. I'm kind of thinking of keeping my hips pointed straight towards the camera as I do this, so I'm more just rotating and twisting my trunk. We all think about core stability as just the muscles being strong, but we have to remember that we have to have mobility through our spine as well in order to make sure we move the right way. Okay, we've got about 5 seconds here. All right. Okay, I'm just gonna check in and make sure. Nina, can you hear me when I'm all the way over there? because now I'm gonna lay down on the mat and do the instructions for there. I'll just see if she gives me a little blurb. All right, so now that we're warmed up, here's my tip of the day about your core, okay? Your transverse abdominis is a muscle that runs from your belly button all the way through back to your spine. It's your deepest muscle to your organs, and that's what helps provide the stability to our spine. Most people tend to leave their ribs flared up in the air, and then they suck in their gut to activate their core, or they do a butt tuck like Steve Urkel. We want to keep a nice straight spine when we're lying on this floor, and we're going to talk about how to move our ribs down and draw our belly in. Okay, so everybody's going to lie down on the floor. Your knees are bent, your hip sockets are relaxed towards the floor, and your kneecaps are pointing straight up to the ceiling. I want you to take 2 fingers and place them right on inside your pelvis bone here, and your other hand right on your rib cage. Okay, so we're going to learn how to drop our ribs and draw our belly button down to firm our core and activate our transverse abdominis. So everyone go ahead and inhale, exhale, let your ribs fall down to the floor. You feel this hand kind of drop and relax. So we're going to inhale again. Exhale, let your ribs fall down. At the end of your exhale, take your belly button and gently pull it down to the floor. I always say activate the muscle about 10%. It's a postural muscle, so it's not all or nothing. So one more time, you're going to inhale. You're going to exhale, let your ribs drop to the floor. Gently draw your belly button down, and you should feel your muscle firm right under those 2 fingers. So everybody just stop for a second. Go ahead and giggle out loud. Ha 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 ha. And you'll feel that muscle pop up under your fingers. That's what you're looking to find when you draw your belly button down. So we're going to go ahead and activate our core, and now we're going to add a challenge by creating leg movement. Okay, the first one's going to start out nice and easy. So we're going to drop the ribs and tighten the belly. So breathe in, exhale and drop the ribs, let them fall, and then firm the lower belly. Keeping your belly firm, you're going to march one knee towards the same side shoulder, and then the opposite knee towards the same side shoulder. This is fairly easy, but what I want to point out is your knee is moving towards your shoulder, not towards your chin. Your back is not arching from the floor up or down, and your hips aren't rocking side to side. So you're bracing that lower belly with the ribs down and marching the legs. Nothing should be moving except your hip sockets. Okay, we're going to do about 4 more of these, and then we're going to make it a little bit harder. If you like this level of challenge, just stay here for the next step. If you want to do the harder one with me, then go ahead. Okay, so the harder one, we're going to drop the ribs, we're going to tighten the belly, we're going to lift one leg up, brace that belly, and lift your second leg up. As you lift that second leg, nothing should change in your spine. Your back shouldn't arch and your hips shouldn't rock. Notice my hip is about 90 degrees bent and my knees are about 90 degrees bent. So let's drop and try that again. We're going to inhale, exhale, drop the ribs, firm the lower belly by pulling the navel down. Feel what your back feels like on the floor and don't let it change. Lift one leg, brace, and lift the other. While you're up here, you're going to gently drop one foot down and back up, and the other one down and back up. Make sure that your back is not arching from the floor and your hips aren't rocking side to side. You stop that by firming the belly and letting the ribs drop. If you lose it, feel free to stop, re-engage the core, and lift back up and go again. Okay, so we're going to do about 6 to 8 reps of these. And remember, if you didn't want to be in this position, you can still keep your legs down and alternately march, just like this. Okay. As you get tired, you should start to feel your core section kind of quiver, trying to hold your abs tight. Okay, so the next exercise is going to be your glutes. So just think of your glutes or your butt muscles supporting your core from the opposite end. So I love bridging for this one. I will say that most people bridge incorrectly. So when you're doing a bridge, I don't want you to curl your tailbone and then lift up and lower down and uncurl. Okay, I call that segmental movement, and I don't want you to do that. I want you to keep your kneecaps straight up towards the ceiling. You're gonna make sure your ribs are down and your belly's tight, toes are up, and you're driving your heels down and away from you into the floor as you lift your body like a board and lower back down. Notice my body leaves the floor at the same time and my body lands on the floor at the same time. This is very important so that you can target your butt instead of grip through your hamstrings. Okay, so we're gonna do about 10 of these here. And feel the squeeze at the top. You should feel the squeeze from your butt cheeks, driving your heels into the floor, not from your hamstrings tightening up. Make sure your kneecaps stay pointed up to the ceiling instead of turning inward at each other. And I'm a terrible counter, guys, but I'm a really good guesstimator, so I'm gonna say we probably have 2 more. Okay, so for the next set, if you're comfortable here, you can keep doing just bridges with 2 feet on the ground. If you wanna take it 1 step further, we're gonna get in the same position with toes up and lift 1 leg from the floor. Notice again, my hips at 90 degrees and my knees at 90 degrees. You're gonna take the heel that's still on the floor, make sure your knees straight up in the air, and again, drive up and down. So we're gonna do 10 of these on 1 leg, and then do 10 on the other. If you're still bridging with 2 feet on the ground, then you're just gonna do 2 sets of 10. And I'm gonna say that's 6. So you should really feel the squeeze in your butt. With just 1 leg on the floor, you start to challenge the inside and outside muscles of the hip. Good, go ahead and switch your feet and drive up. One of the most important things with a bridge, especially when you go into this single leg position, you wanna make sure that your pelvis stays level and isn't dipping or rocking side to side. So it's actually your core that's holding your pelvis in that level position while your glutes or your butt drives you through the movement. And 2 more. Okay, moving on. So the core isn't always about just, can I tighten my muscles? Sometimes it's, can I tighten my muscles while moving other joints and so they don't all roll together? So everybody's heard of a clamshell, where you lay on your side, you bend your knees, my shoulders, my hips, and my heels are in a straight line as if this wall was really butt upright behind me. Okay, my hands tucked under my head, this hand's just resting on the floor on my head. You're gonna keep your feet together. You're going to make sure that your ribs are down and your belly's engaged. And then you're gonna lift your top knee up towards the ceiling and back down. You do not want your knee to lift up and your hips to roll back. Okay, so the rule of thumb is lift your knee only as high as you can without your hips rolling backwards. So some people may be able to go this high, higher than me, or maybe only this high, but the idea is that your core is stabilizing your spine and your pelvis, and your hip socket is getting this movement into rotation. Okay, this is very important so that we can strengthen our core and our hip without straining our lower back. So that's about 10. Again, like the other exercises, if you're comfortable here, stay here. If you want to go harder, we're going to do what I call knee to knee. So that's where you lift your top knee up, brace your belly, and lift your bottom knee up, and then lower down and down, okay? The hard part for here is right after you lift that top knee, engage your core, lift your bottom leg, and then lower and lower. I actually have to put my hand on the floor here because I could probably use a little more work with this exercise. So we're going up and down. Again, you could still be doing just the regular clamshell. You will feel a little bit of soreness right here in your side hip if you're doing the exercise correctly. Make sure that you don't feel movement or pain in your lower back, because that means you're letting the pelvis roll backwards. Okay, so let's flip over to the other side. We're gonna do the same thing. Aren't you glad I flipped it this way instead of rolled over? Because then you would have had a nice view of the moon. So again, let's just start 10, doing the top leg, really focusing on not letting that pelvis roll backwards. It's very challenging to find things to talk about while we're exercising constantly. And I'm pretty good at talking. Good, so we're gonna go 8, 9. If you didn't try it on the other side last time, try this time doing the knee to knee. So again, lift the top knee, brace your belly, lift the bottom knee, lower and lower. So up, brace and lift, down and down. Now I did practice today too, so this is my second time running through all of these. So right now my butt is actually really burning on the side. Keep going. Make sure that you're not rocking backwards. I can't stress that enough. And then up and down. Okay, so those are kind of the mat ones I wanted to go over on your back to learn how to engage your core and get your hips moving. Now I want to move into what we call a tabletop position. We have muscle chains in our bodies that kind of crisscross. So when we get a rotational challenge or force, our core can stabilize so that our body doesn't actually rotate. So this is when we kind of get into some harder core exercises. Again, I'm keeping it easy today, guys. So if you want to see harder, more challenging ones on Thursday, just make sure you message me. So quadruped or on your hands and your knees, okay? Most people start out in this rounded back, butt tucked position. I want you to make yourself look like a tabletop with legs. So your knee is right under your hips and your wrist is right under your shoulder, okay? You could still have a rounded back here, so we're gonna fix that. I want you to lift your tailbone as if you're tilting it up to the ceiling. Do you see how it kind of flattens my lower back here? And then for your shoulder blades, I want you to move your shoulder blades to kind of pinch in towards your spine, and then you're going to push from your armpits through the heel of your hands. And that helps flatten your middle back out and also helps you engage your shoulder blades instead of rounding out and scrunching through your neck and your front shoulder area. Okay, so again, hands and knees like a table, tailbone's lifted, so it's pointed up a little bit to the ceiling to flatten your back. Shoulder blades are pinched and pushing to the floor. So I feel right here trying to hold my upper body up. In this position, you're gonna kind of kick one foot back as if you're standing on the wall behind you. Don't want to see your leg up in the air. I'd rather have you kind of cheat lower to the floor. Okay, so you're going to brace your belly, make sure your ribs are down and not flared. Okay, you're going to kick back, then you're going to take your opposite arm and reach it forward. In this position, your points of pressure should be your non-moving butt cheek and your non-moving armpit, and then your belly to keep you from rotating or letting that pelvis lift up in the air. Okay, so again, we're going to brace, we're going to kick and reach. We're going to come back in and switch sides. Kick and reach. As you get better, you can do both at the same time. Okay, the whole idea behind this exercise, though, is to ribs down, tighten your core so that your pelvis and shoulders don't rotate. A little trick of the trade here is sometimes people tend to rock forward when they kick. Don't do that. Try to keep yourself centered evenly between your knees and your hands. Okay? To make this harder, we're going to go into a reach, a tap, and a reach back to the floor. So you reach with good form, you tap your elbow to your knee, you lose your good form, and then you have to reach back out and find it. Okay? When you reach back out to find your form, I want you to go back to your pressure points of the butt cheek and the armpit and the belly, creating your balance. Okay, so we'll go through these a couple more reps. Just really making sure that those hips aren't rotating or tipping. Okay, so moving right along. So the progression of hip and core exercises is kind of moving through different positions. So I like to start on the ground because you can, it's a safe way to stabilize your spine as you learn new exercises. And then we get on to hands and knees because it's a little bit harder. And then we work our way up into kneeling and even possibly next time standing. I'm just looking at my time. Good, so we're gonna go into half kneel. You're gonna bring one foot out in front. Okay, my knee is 90 degrees bent. my leg is coming straight out from my hip, and my toes and knee are pointed straight ahead towards the camera. It's very important that that knee stays in line here and not in line here, okay? Back hip is nice and tall. When we're in this position, your goal is to keep your knee pointed over your second toe and keep your spine nice and straight. So I don't want to see you side bend or arch backwards. All right, in this position, we're going to engage our core, gently cross our arms across our shoulder. And what you're going to do is you're going to rotate, opening your hips, and then back to center. So if I describe that better, you're going to open your hips first and then follow a shoulder rotation, making sure that front knee stays straight. Most of you will get a stretch through your hip area here. Come back to center, and then you're going to close onto your leg. Okay, again, making sure that that knee stays straight ahead. These are stability exercises, so we're working on making sure that they fire, the muscles fire at the right time. And we're twisting. Another trick with this one is make sure when you rotate, especially to this open side, that you don't lunge forward onto your front foot. Okay, you want to stay anchored between your back knee and your front foot. One more each side. And then we're going to switch your feet. I'm sorry, I keep cutting off my head, and I feel like this is a trial and error. I'll learn not to do that. So line up your foot again in front. Make sure you're 90 at the knee, knees over the second toe, back hips nice and tall, arms crossed. We're going to rotate away from the knee, hips then shoulders, back to center, and then rotate towards the knee. And just make sure when you rotate, you're not arching backwards or you're not side bending to get there, okay? I always say at work, you should rotate as if you're a barber's pole. And we'll keep going. I'm gonna say 3 more each direction. Now, all of these exercises we're doing, we can definitely make harder. Sometimes we need a little equipment such as weights. So if you wanted to collect some weights for our session on Thursday, and you guys sent me some comments to let me know you wanted to progress to some weights, we could figure out how to incorporate weights into the whole shebang. So I know that was, I'm out of breath, but I know that wasn't crazy challenging, but I think it's a good way to start to learn how to activate the right muscles so that you can stabilize your spine, increase your core stability. And I figured I'd save this to the end, not to scare people away, but your core directly relates to your pelvic floor. So, this is kind of exercises for your core and pelvic floor.